Welcome everyone to Emory's Living with Dementia lecture series. My name is Alice Cooper and I am one of the licensed clinical social workers in the Cognitive Neurology Clinic. I am joined today with my fellow social work colleagues, Ashley Varner, who's also in the Cognitive Neurology Clinic, and Laura Meathers, who's in the Integrated Memory Care Clinic. This lecture series was created for our patients and families because of common topics that were brought up through our visits. And so we're hoping that you benefit from them. We also want to know if there are any topics that you'd like to hear that we haven't covered. And so if so, please feel free to put that down in the Q&A section usually located at the bottom of your screen. So a little housekeeping detail, everybody is on mute. We cannot see you, but we do want you to interact when you have questions, or even if you do have a comment. But if you have questions, please put them down also at the Q&A box. We will get to them by the end, at the end of the presentation after our presenter speaks. And so right now, again, we are going to have Ashley introduce our wonderful presenter today.
Welcome to everyone. We are really glad that you're here with us. I also want to just very briefly let folks know that we're going to have a different invitation system starting next month. We're going to be using a listserv system. I will be adding the names that are currently on the invitation mailing list to a listserv. And the advantage of this is that you'll be able to either forward for other people to subscribe to the meetings if you know folks who are interested in these programs or who may be interested, and you will also be able to unsubscribe if you no longer wish to receive the invitations. So just wanted to give you a heads up that that's coming. But the more important thing is that we are really fortunate today to have Debbie Arnold with us, who we are fortunate to have in our cognitive empowerment program at this point. Debbie is a really super skilled clinician who has worked as a clinical social worker for nearly 30 years. She currently works in Emory's cognitive empowerment program, and her specialty area for nearly 15 years has been working with older adults and their families. And she's got a fantastic presentation ready for us today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Debbie.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashley and Alice. I am thrilled to be joining you for this timely topic. Let me know if you are able to see my presentation slides.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So for those in the audience who may not be familiar with the Cognitive Empowerment Program where I work, this is a research program of Emory University School of Medicine and Georgia Tech, where people with a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment come to us with a care partner, and they attend sessions virtually and in person for about a year on a variety of topics that we know are lifestyle interventions known to have an impact on brain health. So they learn about nutrition and staying fit and functional independence. And the classes that I teach, the sessions that I lead, are focused mainly on managing the impact that neurocognitive issues have on a person's identity, on the relationships, and on the quality of day-to-day life. So I wanted to talk a little bit also about the cognitive training that people attend here because they're learning a calendar system, and they're learning strategies like to put my keys on the same hook each time because that'll make them easier to find. Some of these things are common sense, but they become especially important when we're dealing with a cognitive impairment. And the reason that I kind of wanted to highlight that is because, how can I advance? There we go. Because as much as we know the benefits of daily routine and structure, we also know from a quality of life perspective that special occasions really add life to our days, right? So nobody needs the stress of losing their keys or other important items. And although everyone's personal best may be a little bit different from one day to the next, we all generally function better overall when we go to sleep at mainly the same time and we're getting up for the day at mainly the same time. But along come special occasions, and we know that these are times to deepen the connections with the people who are dear to us, and they're really important to be able to participate in to the degree possible. So with that being said, I do want to also say that this is not exactly a lecture, because I'm not the expert on your life or on your person. We know that what may work really well for one person or one family is not going to fit for everyone. So this is more of a context for having these conversations in your family and a framework for considering how do we approach celebrating. Holidays, even on a good day, holidays can be equal parts joyful and stressful. Complicated feelings do show up. I said may show up. Complicated feelings can be expected. And they often include a few shades of the blues. So complicated feelings is also going to mean different things to different people. There may be subtle or maybe not so subtle pressures to be really grateful and really joyous, have everything be sparkly and special, to feel like we're living in a Hallmark movie or on one of those commercials for Publix that, gives everybody goosebumps and makes you tear up. And that's how holidays are supposed to be, right? And if we're not feeling it, or our household doesn't look just like that, guilt feelings can show up. And we also often will miss the people that we've shared these holiday traditions with throughout our lifetime. And if we can't be together for whatever reason, we feel that acutely. So part of going into the holidays is also, sorry about my technology skills, it's about being realistic and honest with yourself and with the others that you're celebrating with about how you're really doing and what is important this holiday season. So when you hear that voice in your head saying, I should be merry, one of the things Dr. Lindsay Preiser says is, don't should all over yourself, right? That voice in your head is not always right. So setting some limits on your self-talk is a good way of taking care of yourself. So it's helpful to consider the celebrations that have always been your personal favorites and the particular traditions or rituals and the specific foods that seem like they can make or break these special occasions, right? And let me say also that the guidelines I'm discussing don't just apply, to Thanksgiving and the December holidays. We can think in terms of birthdays and other special occasions that come up all year round. I have one nephew who has never liked cake. So for his birthday, we know we better get the giant cookie, right? And going into the holidays, it's helpful to think about, what are the songs we always sing as a family, or the prayer that we might share together, the foods that might be unique to your cultural heritage. And sometimes this can really help distill which things, maybe we can let go. We can't do everything every year, and different things may be important to different members of the family. So, in different countries, they open presents different times, Christmas Eve, Christmas morning. In England, it's Boxing Day. Our family celebrates some really unusual holidays. My late brother-in-law was a math teacher, and we honor him on Pi Day, March the 14th. And the students at Georgia Tech, my daughter attends, they celebrate May the 4th be with you, because they're, really into Star Wars. So when I said Pi Day, did anybody picture a particular kind of pie? For me, I'm going to proudly pass on the tradition of hoarding the candy the day after Halloween when it goes on sale, maybe the day after Valentine's Day, those things. My family knows that. So also consider how cognitive issues may have impacted gatherings up to now. You may have learned some really important lessons the couple of years, going into this. It looks to me like these people in the picture are having their gathering outside, which tells me it's probably a COVID accommodation. And we've learned some important things through COVID too. But it may be difficult looking at the last couple of years to really sort out what the challenges were from cognitive impairment and which challenges may have been due to COVID. Perhaps certain gatherings or travel just didn't happen, or were on a much smaller scale because of the pandemic. So some of this is about your lived experiences, the last couple of Thanksgivings or the last couple of holidays, but it's also about kind of your anxieties, what might happen, the what ifs. Is the person I'm supporting sort of disinhibited, particularly in an unfamiliar house? They might be less comfortable and have more symptoms being expressed. The task of having to match names and faces is, much more front and center when we're seeing people for the first time in a long while. And a lot of families in our program tell us it's pretty normal for them to have two groups of loved ones, right? The family and friends who they've told about the diagnosis, who really get it, and maybe, those others. And they're a lot more comfortable spending time with folks that they have educated. So it may be that going into this holiday season is an opportunity for you to educate some more people. So a lot of this is going to be about planning ahead, but it's also important not to get married to plan A. And one of the things I mean by that is that often one of the first signs of stress is that we get more rigid, right? We are more attached to the plan, whether it's working or not. Our creativity and our willingness to change course kind of go away. So knowing that is helpful. Planning ahead allows us to anticipate so we can avoid or manage stress as much as possible. We can consider whether having guests at our house or attending a gathering someplace else might be a more comfortable fit. Holiday travel, enough said, right? Holiday travel is pretty much synonymous with stress. There are so many more cars on the road. There are so many more travelers in the airport. So being able to anticipate and avoid some stress might mean, talking to loved ones about gathering at an off-peak time, or, just knowing that this is going to be stressful, and trying to work around it. And, it's also true just for human beings in general, right? With no cognitive impairment whatsoever, people have comfort zones that are different, and that various factors will play a role when it comes to socializing. And as we age, we have some other concerns, right? We might have hearing impairment. We might have some issues going up and down steps, or dietary concerns. And just in general, different people are, if you consider the people that how social we all are. Is someone an introvert and they get peopled out much more easily than other people? So I bring that up because comfort zones do shift, and neurocognitive disease typically means the usual suspects, whatever they are going to bother the individual more and or sooner. So basically, we anticipate that cognitive issues are going to make the comfort zone narrower. So wherever we can minimize stress, it's going to be helpful. So think about what the usual suspects might be in the celebrations that you're invited to or hosting. I know one household that we have been invited to. We noticed that the young kids start running around screaming just after dessert. So that's a household that we might plan to visit earlier in the day, or say, we're going to need to get going right after dinner, because that's a lot to deal with. You may have friends that focus more on the adult beverages than the nutritious food. So that's a place that it might be important to have something filling before you go, just knowing that. So it's a matter of considering what factors contribute to how comfortable the setting is for the individual with cognitive impairment now, knowing that, this is a moving target. But you may notice patterns. Are they better at a particular time of day? Maybe a particular driving distance is just too long and too far. So that's going to rule out certain destinations. How about the number of folks attending? We really feel like for a lot of our families, having a few smaller gatherings that might be shorter in duration are going to be a lot more successful than one big group gathering that's all day and all night. And last, but definitely not least, please remember that care partners run out of steam too. It often takes quite a lot of energy just to get to a gathering, or even if you're hosting at your own home before the guests arrive, and being exhausted before you even see people, it's just a lot less fun, right? So let's talk about self-care a little bit. So awareness of how you feel, right? Your stress level and your self-talk. Sometimes it creeps up on us, but often if we can get quiet for even a minute or two before we get out of the car or before we get out of bed, or before I, get up from my chair, if I just quiet down for a second, I can notice where in my body I'm holding stress. Are my shoulders up around my ears? Am I gripping the steering wheel till my knuckles are white? Where in my body am I holding it? And on a scale of, totally relaxed to really losing it, how my stress level is. How am I talking to myself? Am I being gentle? Am I allowing myself to really experience the feelings that are bubbling up? Or am I, just trying to push through and, it will get better if only I, don't pay attention to those signs. And that rarely works, right? So the self-talk needs to be about honoring where you really are and how you can soothe yourself. So what is going to be restorative for you? So balance in as many areas as possible. And it might be balance between being with people and having quiet time, or it might be balance between, being on and the cruise director for everybody, or delegating and, kind of bowing out and taking a walk or something. So really consider what downtime means for you and what refills your cup, what is restorative for you, because that is also not one size fits all. For one person, watching a football game, for another person, listening to music or doing needlework or crafting. Somebody else, just watching the birds visit the bird feeder is really very relaxing and offers balance. And can you balance connection with others while also connecting to yourself this season? It means maybe participating in some gatherings, but giving yourself permission to decline things that don't feel right. Maybe it also means considering the general rules that you have learned help you to feel your best. We see after Thanksgiving, we tend to see a lot of people with really high blood pressure because the Thanksgiving menu is really high in salt. So for those of us who are doing a great job managing our sodium intake throughout the year, come Thanksgiving dinner and those rules go right out the window. So how can you plan ahead to know what works for you and what's going to allow you to feel your best, not only at the time, but maybe the next morning too. We can generally stay up late for a night, but we're really not able to burn the candle at both ends for very long. This is also where balance comes in with the needs of a person living with a dementia versus the needs of the care partner. And this is a really challenging juggling act for a lot of families. For example, Maybe the care partner's childhood best friend is in town visiting their family. But, as a couple, you've already done a lot of socializing, and the person with cognitive issues is kind of peopled out. So how can you balance those priorities? Can you get creative about, allowing the person who needs quiet time and space what they need, and, visiting in another area of the house, or having someone else maybe keep them company so that the care partner also gets what they need. And I'm not trying to give anyone more to worry about than you've already got, but these are some themes that families have raised with us. If you take nothing else from this chat today, please give yourself permission to take breaks without declaring defeat. Whether a celebration is at your house or at someone else's, truly, most everything works better if it's unplugged for a little bit, and human beings are no exception. Maybe the plan B includes a few minutes of fresh air in the backyard. Maybe if you're at someone else's home, it's just going to be a timeout in the car. And regardless of how long you've been with other people, you have to be honest about when you need a little time without people. Sometimes it helps also to identify an ally in the gathering, so that you can kind of touch base with that person, because that's often a really helpful way of releasing steam. People tell me that, there's one adult child that they can just, make eye contact across the room, and, that person will allow them, just a few minutes of respite in the middle of a family gathering. So let's talk a little bit about where family and friends do fit in. So a lot of times, even when there's no cognitive impairment in the picture, people feel the need to continue doing things in ways that just aren't really a good fit anymore. And we do this for a number of reasons. To continue traditions, because if we don't continue them, they're not really traditions, right? To keep the peace in the valley above all, because we know change is hard on other people. We don't want to stress other people out, even if it means we take on a little bit more. And finally, and more specifically to neurocognitive disease, we really are invested in a picture of everything being fine, all is well, as long as possible, right? As long as we can. And I'm here to tell you that fine is a 4-letter word. And being real is also a 4-letter word, but it's the good kind. So maybe you'll be seeing people for the first time in a long while, and family and friends or chosen family may not really know whether some cognitive changes have progressed since they last saw someone. And we may really prefer to have big conversation with the capital C, in person, but we have to consider how realistic that might be in a big group. So in some cases, the planning ahead to eliminate some stress might mean a phone call or an email before folks get together. Often it can be really helpful in terms of just a couple of useful bullet points of this is how things are, and this is kind of what you might see. These are some conversations to avoid, or some behaviors that you might notice, can be really helpful in allowing other people to come in with a little bit of knowledge so that things just go more smoothly for you and your person. We had one care partner tell us that she wrote an email to the adult siblings, of the person who had the diagnosis, and just said, they might ask you the same questions. They might not initiate conversation as much as you're used to. Please don't ask about their job because they have a lot of feelings about having had to retire. But, those things are really helpful, as well as, they love to talk about their high school basketball career, some things in the past that are really pleasant to reminisce about. So those are some safe topics and some successful ideas. And it's really a favor to other people to kind of give them this heads up if you're comfortable doing that. Other families might just have like 1 or 2 sentences that they're comfortable saying, that's truthful, but not overly detailed about, personal health information, and, and a kind of a polite but firm way of shutting down a lot of extra questions or a lot of extra suggestions from other people that, we can talk about that next week on the phone, but I don't really want to hear about the website that you know about right now, or the book that you read right now. I just want to deflect and be focused on the occasion that we're here to celebrate. Feeling so thankful that we're all together. Doesn't that food smell delicious? Let's go watch the kids playing football, and being able to just sort of get back to the occasion. We also kind of know by this time the bad habits that our loved ones have. We know some of our family members are just going to say dumb things. So being honest with yourself before you even get together, that past behavior is a good predictor of future behavior, and this may not be open to change. So being realistic is a good way to manage your expectations too. Once you have had conversations and kind of come out of the closet with more people about living with a cognitive impairment, it is also possible to then follow up with a little bit more education. And ideally, this results in the support team growing in understanding and also in the kind of practical help that you can count on. So others might be open to sharing more responsibilities, or you might feel more like you could ask. So changes may be going on, but change generally doesn't feel as lousy so changes that happen to us are hard. Changes that we have some say in and we can participate and be an architect to kind of design how it goes, go a lot better for us. So these are some ideas of changes that you might be able to consider embracing. So we all want to be environmentally responsible, But maybe we back off of those goals a little bit and we use paper or plastic and we save the planet next month. We might have in the past made the whole meal soup to nuts from scratch, but the options for fully prepared meals or partially prepared meals are a lot more than they used to be. And, you might decide to get the main protein, the ham or the turkey, fully cooked, and just make some side dishes or invite other people to contribute to the meal. So paper goods instead of china, maybe hiring a little help, finances permitting, a little extra cleanup crew. And if you host, it's good to be prepared for people to ask what they can do or what they can bring. So consider what that might look like. Accepting help and learning to delegate are really important skills to practice. And it does get a little easier the more you do it, but it often doesn't come naturally, and we have to really make ourselves ask for help intentionally. And finally, try not being rigid. I'm speaking to myself. Try considering potential alternate scenarios. Have a plan B in mind, if possible, because if we know that creativity leaves us as we start to get overwhelmed, having a plan B in mind before we get overwhelmed is really important. And also just because in life, we have learned the hard way that last minute options are always more limited and more expensive. So planning ahead for a plan B, even if you don't need it, is sometimes really a good idea. So I threw this slide in there just as we're speaking of alternative solutions. I actually did attend at the beginning of the pandemic, I attended a gathering online. And it certainly was not the same as being all together. But at the same time, there were a lot of pros. This was at a time where masking was really essential. And I really did miss seeing the bottom half of people's faces. So being able to see people on Zoom, even in their little boxes, allowed me to, share a smile. We shared a toast, we shared a song, even though we weren't sharing the same meal in the same place. It allowed us to visit with people on the other side of the country who probably wouldn't have been able to attend in person anyway. One of the people attending had a brand new baby and wasn't really even leaving the house yet. And so that was a really novel experience and just a way of thinking outside the box that I wanted to share with you. So considering different sides of the mountain is a perspective that I kind of like. First of all, I think this is a nice, relaxing nature picture. So when we talk about self-care, spending time in nature is definitely on my list. But also navigating the December dilemmas is, so December dilemmas is a phrase that family therapists use to refer to the issues that come up for interfaith families each winter. But it doesn't necessarily only refer to, do we get a Christmas tree or are we lighting Hanukkah candles? For most families, there are differences in what's important around the holidays, really right below the surface. So everything isn't going to be important to everyone. And it's about figuring out what's important to you and the person that you support, and trying to manage those things. So, we want to represent generational connections, but in many families, it just becomes hard. So tuning into your feelings, this mountain is about other people not being able to see what's on the other side unless I tell them. So we can't expect everyone to assume that they know what's important, and no one else can decide what's most important to you. So on that note, I read this article about forging new traditions, and I stole the artwork as well. And I really like the idea that rituals and traditions are important as a line between the past and the present, because they honor a family's values and collective identity. These are the feelings of belonging. And I think when we consider folks with a cognitive impairment at the holiday season, it's the feelings of belonging and the feeling of the holiday season that we really want to honor. And holiday traditions can be touchstones for a person with dementia. But traditions, may not last forever if they don't continue to be meaningful. And not every tradition is worth continuing just because it's the way that we've done it. So forging new traditions really isn't as hard as it sounds, and it doesn't mean starting from scratch. It generally means just, some creative adjustments to existing practices. The example I loved about this was celebrating Happy New Year. Instead of ringing in the new year at midnight, ringing in the new year at noon. And this is something that families with younger children had started doing, but I love this idea. I prefer not to drive at night on the road with other drivers who are under the influence of substances. And, frankly, some of the people that I want to celebrate with are not their best when they're tired. None of us are. So, being able to consider doing a nooner celebration was a lovely idea to me. We also learn by experience what what worked and we want to continue to do, and maybe what didn't go the best. Maybe depending on how Thanksgiving goes at another family member's home, we may take that under advisement and consider, whether we want to celebrate Christmas at our place or bow out. We just want to really learn as we go. Another new tradition I loved that was new to me when I moved to the South was having a gathering on New Year's Day with the people that I care about to enjoy these traditional foods of Hoppin' John, black-eyed peas and collard greens for luck and money in the new year. And maybe everybody coming at one time doesn't work so great. So staggering people to come at different times of day and having smaller gatherings might be better. Consider how your values, your practices, and even the family recipes they have on here, even the holiday china can be honored going forward. And finally, please remember that those with neurocognitive disease and care partners can and do continue to experience joy, connecting and celebrating good times with the people who love them.
Debbie, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I picked up a lot of tips.
Awesome.
If there are questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A section.
I know we have had suggestions come through for future events, so thank y'all for submitting those. Debbie, I think you've given a lot of great tips across the board for how to manage the stress of holidays, but thank you for the recommendations for how to really tailor this for people who are having those cognitive changes and figuring out how to fit where our people are with what is sort of an appropriate way to celebrate with them. So share your questions. If y'all have tips that we could share with people in the future, we'd love to hear tips. We get our best ideas from our care partners and from our patients. So feel free to share those as well.
We definitely learn from our families more than we ever learned in school as social workers.
I will say, if you are flying, this is a tip that has been shared with me by many families before. If you are flying on the holidays, the bathrooms tend to be a place that are rife for potential disasters, particularly at the Atlanta airport, where the entrance is not necessarily the same as the exit. And so identifying where those family restrooms are ahead of time can sometimes be really helpful. So that you can have a better eye on where your loved one may be, so they can have a better idea of where y'all are, or potentially even going together. So that is helpful. There is also a service called TSA Cares, which I think you have to call ahead of your flight and sort of arrange for them. I've heard of varying reports from families that have used this service, but it's an extra way to get assistance through security. Some have had an excellent experience with it. Some have had a terrible experience with it. But again, it is something to consider to help get through those security lines, particularly if one of y'all has to be searched for additional reasons and there's some sort of delay and somebody gets stuck behind in a line. That's another opportunity for problems and concerns to come up. So being thoughtful about how you're going to get through that can be helpful as well.
It's also possible for another person to support you getting through the airport and getting actually onto the plane. You can get a gate pass for someone that is not a ticketed passenger, and that can just be a real lifeline.
It's hard to do sometimes on the fly. So
It
again,
is.
thinking through this ahead of time can be really helpful.
Exactly.
And having those conversations. How can we make this the easiest? How can we use as little of our cognitive reserve as possible getting to our destination so that we can enjoy it when we get there? All right. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, then we will finish for today, and we will look forward to seeing everybody in December.
Great. Happy everything. Hope it goes smoothly. Let us know.
Take care.
Thanks, Debbie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.